Hello and welcome to Catholic Current, where we discuss our faith and give you an update on events affecting the Church in the United States. From Washington, D.C., I'm Mara Moser. Soon, people in the United States will celebrate Labor Day. With us to talk about the significance of this occasion is Anthony Granado, Associate General Secretary of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Maura. It's good to be back.
So, Labor Day is one of the few secular holidays that the USCCB regularly puts out a statement for. What is the significance of this day to our faith?
Well, both as Americans and as church, it's a great opportunity for us to reflect, to pray and think, and even study about the role that workers have played in the building of our nation. Workers have built this country from the beginning. To reflect on what the church teaches and to give thanks, honestly, to give thanks to workers, those who contribute to our economy and to the life of our communities.
And the church has a very rich history of teaching on the dignity of work and the rights of workers.
Absolutely. I mean, the church has engaged for centuries, going back to the very beginning, to Scripture itself. We see in the very beginning in Genesis, for example, it begins with, in the beginning when God created. So this idea of creation, God is doing work. We use this imagery of God working for the establishment, the creation of the entire order, of the visible and invisible order. And in the creation of the human person and the centrality of work, even in Genesis, about how we, through our relationship with God, being in creating God's image and likeness, we participate in that creation through our work. Now with the fall, as Genesis reminds us, sin enters the picture and work is transformed, unfortunately, in a negative way to allow for toil and drudgery, right? And the church over the centuries, while uplifting the dignity of the human person and work, also recognized that through injustice and through sin, that toil and drudgery has impacted the life of workers and all of us. And so the church asks us to rethink about work, about the plight of workers, and really it's about our relationship with God and others.
So, of course, Labor Day is about work, which we've just been discussing. How does rest fit in?
So again, this also comes back to Scripture, right? And on the seventh day, he rested. So we get this image of God having created the order of the universe, takes the time to set aside for reflection. Now, God doesn't obviously need to rest, but it really, if you think about Scripture and Genesis, it's really a story about our relationship to God and to each other. It's a relational story. And so rest is absolutely imperative. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, for example, addresses the issue of rest and the importance of the need for it, as is a social compendium. We are called to rest because it's a commandment of the Ten Commandments. We honor the Sabbath. We take the time to reflect, to pray, to be with our families. But it's also not a time simply for leisure, right? Of course, we need time to rest, to be participants in our community, to spend time with our families, and of course, to attend Mass and to give our time to God, which we do throughout the week as well. But it's also a time, the great Catholic philosopher Joseph Pieper's really reflected on this issue and his work on leisure and culture, that it's also a time, leisure or rest is also about a time for us to go deeply into that prayerful life, more deeply into it, more deeply into our life of thought. Because when we're so busy working, we don't often have the time to think about what it is to truly be a participant in society, what it means to be a child of God, how can we improve our community. So really, rest is an important part for all people.
So it's important for us to think about both the importance of work, the dignity of workers, and the importance of rest.
Absolutely.
So there's been a lot of talk about the economy, the state of the economy,
Sure.
Unemployment. We know that the prices of things have gone up on things like groceries. I know I feel that. What does Catholic social teaching have to say about what a just economy looks like?
Well, that's the church has really reflected on justice and what we would call the modern economy for centuries. You think of the life and thought of St. Thomas Aquinas. He talked about just price. We think about just wages. At the center of all of Catholic social thought, and particularly in the economy, is the human person. The social compendium actually says that for man is the source, the center, and the purpose of all economic and social life, that purpose of the economy is not found in the economy itself, but rather in its being destined for humanity and society. Humans are at the center of the economy. The bishops in the United States and their document, Economic Justice for All, really asked the question about what the economy was for, what it does to workers, what it does for workers, what it does for our community. So at the center of economic life must be the person, the life and dignity of the human person, the common good, justice, allowing people to interact in solidarity under just conditions. So practically speaking, it raises questions about just wages, just conditions, just life, the ability to raise a family, to participate in civil society, to give back. Part of having a job, the Catechism reminds us, the teaching of the Church reminds us, is it's also for us to be charitable, to work for justice, to help people charitably. So having the income, having the ability to help others. Again, it comes back to this relational question.
There's a lot of talk about immigrants and immigration. What role do they play in the economy today, and how would we like that to be structured?
Well, this country is built on immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants. So we think back the founding of this country to the 20th century up to the present, whether we're talking about the building of bridges, the building of cities like New York, Chicago, small towns built by immigrants, bridges. Immigrants work in our hospitals. Immigrants serve in our military.
Yeah, every sector. Food workers. Right?
Absolutely. Immigrants
Farm
put
workers.
food on our table. So the immigrant labor, and it's something that the Committee on Domestic Justice and Human Development will be reflecting on this year for Labor Day, is the role of immigrants in contributing to the economy. Now, just this past month, the Congressional Budget Office actually put out a very important report, and I think it's important to note, on how immigrants will impact the budget and the economy moving through 2026. And there's some 2 data points that they found. I think this is key about immigrants. Immigrant labor, particularly the surge of immigrants since 2021, they projected that between the period of 2024 to 2034, 2 things. Immigrant labor will lower the deficits in a net to close to $1 trillion in that period, immigrant labor. And second, will add approximately $1.2 trillion in federal revenue. That's taxes that immigrants will contribute to the good of the nation between that period, the same period. So we have a lot to give thanks for to immigrants. We're all immigrants, unless you're Native American. All our families came from somewhere else and helped build this country and make the country what it is.
Now we're heading into Labor Day weekend, a time when a lot of people kind of think of this as the end of the summer. Kids are going back to school. How do you suggest people celebrate this day?
I think I would say that, it's important that people reflect, take the time for leisure, take the time for rest, and to think about what labor has done for this country. What my father was a construction worker. I think about him all the time. He's passed on now, but what in just driving here to the office, seeing the construction workers help in the streets, we need to think about what they've contribute, what workers contribute to the nation. We need to pray and reflect, learn about what the teaching of the church is around labor, just working conditions. I think we also need to find ways to learn what the church is engaged in public policy. What are the current policies currently in whether it's in your local state house or here in Washington in Congress that would impact the lives of workers and working conditions. And I think it's important, when you come across people, these are the people who protect us, these are the people that put food on our table, just to say thank you, to show a sign of appreciation to workers who work very hard to help make this country great. So I would say that'd be a great time for reflection, prayer, and giving thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Anthony. This has been a really interesting discussion.
Thank you, Maura.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Catholic Current. You can find out more about this week's topic by visiting us online at usccb.org or follow us on social media at USCCB. I'm Maura Moser. See you next time.